So, I mean, we're rolling. We can do whatever we want. You know?
All right.
So, do you want to do a take?
Sure.
Hi, welcome. I'm Eric.
I'm Mori.
And welcome to
Shuttle
the
Couch.
Shuttle Couch.
Wait, welcome to the Shuttle Couch?
Well, okay. What do you think?
I think welcome to Shuttle Couch, or the Shuttle Couch or Shuttle Couch?
Well, if it's like welcome to the Shuttle Couch, that doesn't really make sense because they're not coming to the couch, right?
Welcome to Shuttle Couch?
Yeah, so Shuttle Couch is the name of the show. So, welcome to Shuttle Couch.
You want to do This is Shuttle Couch?
This is Shuttle Couch. I'm Eric.
I'm Mori.
And this is
Shuttle
the Shuttle.
Wait,
This
hold
is
on.
going in video.
Wait. This is Shuttle Couch?
And this is
And
pause.
and this is.
And this is
No, you
pause.
gotta get your. We gotta get our what's called transitionary phrases together. So are we going with and?
Okay, and this is pause. Shuttle Couch.
Oh, we're doing a pause.
Yeah.
Like
Like-
1, 2, 3.
Right. I'm Eric.
I'm Mori.
And this
This
is
is
Shuttle
Shuttle
Couch. Hey!
Let's go. How
All
many
right, I
takes?
cut the film. So, first I just wanted to do a quick introduction of like who we are because this is my first time showing my face on camera. So I'm Eric, the rocket scientist. I'm the kind of the mind behind the channel, so to speak. Yeah, I mean I've been playing for a few years, like 15 years of badminton, and we're like okay at it. Do you want to?
I'd say we're
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Do you want to talk about yourself a little bit?
Hello, my name's Mori. I've been playing for kind of on and off for between like 13, 14 years, but I would say like dedicated time probably like 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked as a stringer for a long time. Was trained by like professional Yonex stringers, so very passionate about like equipment and stuff. But yeah, we're definitely not good, but we're okay enough, which I
Yeah.
think is it's a good place to start.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And okay, the reason I wanted to bring that up, like normally I wouldn't really care because like, I don't think it really matters that much, like how good you are if you want to like make videos and stuff. But like, I've gotten some comments that are just like, hey, I want I want to see footage of you playing, right? And which I think is valid, right? Because if you're seeing someone who like reviews rackets and then you see footage of them hitting and they're just like, oh, this racket like generates power, like it's really, and then you go on the video and you're just like fucking nay-naying on the court,
the whipping the nay-nay.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to reassure the viewers that like we do know how to play, and I'll probably even just like put up a little bit of footage of us. Some recording.
Yeah,
I'm sure you have recordings.
Right here.
I literally saw a recording that Ploy posted of you sparring with Justin the other day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What gym was that, by the way? I didn't recognize.
So that's Featherflight in Bellevue. It's the new gym.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nice actually.
Yeah, okay.
Like
It does look nice,
the court
yeah.
space on the sides, not super big, so there's
Yeah.
not a lot of place to like sit and view, or put your stuff. But I mean, I think the management is doing the right thing there. Like they're asking the community for feedback. They're
Yeah.
like really receptive.
Yeah.
And then I think it's cool that they're relatively cost effective. Like I think the drop in there is $15.
That's not bad.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, just for context, Mori and I, we live in the greater Seattle area, so Pacific Northwest.
Shit's
and
expensive, man.
I know, and a lot of the gyms like aren't drop-in friendly around here. Like you're having to pay like $20-$30 just to go in like once in a lot of the gyms, and some of the gyms are either like
They're member only.
where you have
Or-
to get a membership, or
Yeah.
like their court reservation where the cost just adds up a lot.
Right.
So I mean that's a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, no, they're doing good.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna get a membership there because
Oh,
they
cool.
seem to be doing the right things. Yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah.
my only complaint is the gym there's really cold, especially like this time of year.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
you'll be playing and like the shuttles are just moving at like
Yeah.
-1 speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah, that's a tough
you're
one.
hitting as hard
That's
as
a
you
tough
can,
one,
and
yeah.
it's just like.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's why we're wearing sweaters, because it's actually pretty cold outside today. It's like it's
35 degrees.
What time is it? It's like almost noon, and it's still in the 30s outside, which is for us Pacific Northwesters is pretty cold.
Pretty cold. Yeah. Pretty cold.
So all you Canadians watching, yeah, just know that we're kind of wimps here.
All you Canadians watching, there's like a 90% chance we are more north than you. Okay, you fake northerners.
Yeah. Okay, but like it.
Sorry, tangent. My bad.
I mean, Don't listen to don't listen to
If
him.
you look
He
at the
doesn't-
line,
he
if you
doesn't
look at the
speak for
line,
us. No, 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 okay.
Seattle's more north than most of Canada, just by the way.
Okay, well, if you want to talk about that, then like Europe is okay. Whatever.
Never
Anyway.
mind. Keep going. Do your thing.
Yeah, I'm also recovering a little bit from the flu, so you know we're gonna have to cut the video whenever I cough. But that's we're gonna cross that bridge when we get there. No, okay. So the thing is, like, when I cough, it goes like you like automatically kind of bend down a little bit, so it actually goes right into the mic, and it's really really loud.
Yeah, you gotta cough like.
Yeah, I have to.
Cough like this.
I have to dab when I'm coughing.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay. Yeah.
It's better to cut than
that's old
dab.
generation. Okay. So I'm a little older than some of you guys think. So like
40,
things like that.
50.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
I mean, I look damn good for 40. I'm just saying.
You look damn good for 40.
Yeah.
Which makes sense why you're not 40.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's get to the topic for today, which is, I thought for my first video it would be kind of nice to like just do a retrospective on 2024 and talk a little bit about like what rackets we used, some new rackets that came out, like things that stood out to us, and if we have the knowledge for it, we can talk a little bit about what we're looking forward to in 2025. Although I don't usually keep my ear to the ground that much like upcoming releases, so we might not have anything for that, but that's fine. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, the other reason why Mori is here is because, you know, he said he worked as a stringer. He's also a racket enthusiast, so like he has a fair amount of rackets. And he's probably, you know, the guy that I go to like talk about rackets a lot, and he's also very knowledgeable because he worked in the shop. A shop which I spent a lot of money in in the past.
A lot of money.
Not proud of it, but you know, here we are.
Yep.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So let's see, 2024. So the beginning of 2024, what kind of rackets have you been using? Well, so walk me through.
Yeah, so I guess if you back up even more than that, my history with rackets has been kind of like up and down. Like when I was a junior player, like I just picked, I guess like junior players, you really just pick like whatever's like on the poster, right? You see Li Chongwei, you see Lin Dan, you just like, you're like, oh, that one looks sick. You just pick that one, right? But then getting into college, I was like, oh, this one's actually really hard to play with, or this one's really easy to play with, or this one does this well, right? I started out by using like even balance, a little bit head heavy, and then I ventured into headlight. And then where I ended up with basically was like in 2018, if you go really back, I was really, really into the Astrox 88S, the original, because I thought it was like a great all-around racket. Super fast, can still provide a good amount of power, but like just like the drive game was so clean. And then from there, obviously they went out of production. I didn't really like the new 88S Pros and such, so I was always looking for like another kind of fix for like that type of racket. And then I ventured into the Mizuno 40s 10 and 40s 11 Quicks. I think those are fantastic rackets. But in terms of like 2024, I mean, I started out by using the Arcsaber 7 Pro. I'm just gonna preface this by saying like 90% of the people I play with and who are probably going to watch this, like they can either be using this racket or this guy right here, the Astrox 77 Pro. I guess, that's something I wanted to talk about as well. So the way like Yonex, for like very, very basic context, the way Yonex names their rackets is if it has, or based on the number that the series starts with, it's going to denote whether it's like an easy racket to use or a hard racket to use based on stiffness. So if you have an Astrox 66 versus an Astrox 99, the 66 is going to be a lot softer, maybe a little less heavy. But I think the 7 series for the Arcsaber and the Astrox, like 90% of people are going to be really, really happy with those. And that's where I found myself at the beginning of 2024, which is with Arcsaber 7 Pro. Not the stiffest, not the heaviest, but like super fast, really, really strong defense. It's got a good whip, so if you don't have like the fastest swing, you can still generate good power out of it into the back. But the only thing for me is like I don't really love the color scheme, but it, you know, you could learn to love it.
It could be worse for sure. So that's an interesting thing that you brought up, which is so what I hear you saying is that you think that the 7 numbered Yonex rackets tend to be like a good entry point.
Absolutely. And I think like if you're serious about starting badminton, a lot of people will say like you can just buy a cheap racket and then when you graduate you can just buy like a nicer racket when you figure out what you like. I can definitely agree with that, but if you just want to spend like if you want just one racket from the time you're a beginner / intermediate, and then it's gonna like carry over into when you're advanced, a 7 series racket is both like usually flexible enough to be beginner friendly, but also more than capable of holding you over. Like there are pros using these rackets.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and just for context, like I agree with everything he's saying. These are things that we've talked about before. And basically what we're saying is that like for these 7 series rackets, a lot of people overlook them because they are, you know, quote unquote entry level rackets for, I mean, like pretty much any player, right? I think for female players, maybe the 5 or 6 number.
I think, one thing that really like annoys me, especially when I was like working as a stringer, was guys especially have like the biggest egos when it comes to either the racket they're using. Like they have to use the heaviest, stiffest racket. Oh, it's like, is this one made for smashing? And I'm like, dude, it's not like you're gonna, like, the racket is not gonna decide how hard you smash. It's all about comfortability, right? But then also with string tension. Guys are always like, oh, I need a string with like the hardest string, like BG80, highest tension. And then they come back a day later, they mishit it one time and it broke, right? I think conservative choices like this are going to be like really, really comfortable for like 90% of people. So yeah, the Arcsaber 7 Pro, I think my personal favorite for the past, like, if you want to call it 2023, 2024, that was my guy.
Awesome.
How about you?
I mean, I also have, well, both of these rackets I had for quite a while, and I used both pretty extensively. I wouldn't say that like I mained like Arc 7 Pro, but like I definitely used it enough to become familiar with it. And yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Like the things I like about these rackets are they are pretty easy to use, and I think that's really important for someone who's an amateur player, right? And just to clarify, when I say amateur, I just mean non-professional. Okay, so amateur could mean anything from like, you know, someone who's intermediate, still kind of learning the game, all the way to someone who like plays at like a regional or even national level.
But they're just like not training.
They're just not professional. They don't train regularly. You know, they're not part of like, you know, that an organization that like kind of promotes them to play international badminton, right? And you know, you see people like that, even like top level professionals using these rackets, right? Like up until pretty recently, Dutchapol from Thailand, used the Arc 7 Pro.
Yeah, that's my boy.
You know, a little bit of an outlier, but it just goes to show that it just really depends on like, you know, your personal preferences. And for 77 Pro, like
Feng Yanze's using it.
Feng Yanze, like as a man, and that guy's like
6 foot something.
Yeah, he's like 6'5", 6'4", or something like that. Plenty of top level female players use this, both in singles and doubles.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Huang Dongping, Huang Yaqiang, An Seyoung uses it.
Chen
Yufei.
Does An Seyoung use that, really? Does An Seyoung use the 77 Pro?
Well, she used to, at least for a while. I don't know if she still does, but she used the original 77 for a long time.
I remember that.
But yeah, He Jiting uses 77 Pro. So basically, what we're saying is the good thing about these 7 series rackets, and this includes the NanoFlare 700 too, right? Because that's also 7 series rackets. That's like kind of the golden trio is Arc 7 Pro, 77 Pro, and I guess now NanoFlare 700 Pro, which by the way, if you're dedicated enough to this channel and you're watching this, that's going to be my first racket review. So subscribe and stay tuned for that. That would be kind of the golden trio of like the entry point for Yonex rackets, right? And they're easy enough to use where you can pick one up at the intermediate level and it won't hold you back, right? Because buying certain rackets, right, I think what people don't realize, and you can talk about this too in a bit, is that when you get something that's beyond your skill level or something that's like too stiff or too heavy, it can actually hurt you, right? You can actually develop like deficiencies in your technique.
Absolutely.
And you could literally hurt yourself, like injure your, you know, develop shoulder or wrist injuries. Like, if you ask, you know, look at people that use these rackets, I'm sure that any of you viewers can find someone like that who has picked up a racket that's like really demanding and then is just like having these problems, and it's like, I don't know why that's happening. But our point with saying that pro players are using these rackets is that the skill ceiling is very high, right? Like it will not hold you back even as you improve to higher levels. And to some extent, I almost think it's better to train with rackets like this that like kind of give you that pliability and flexibility. Because again, using demanding rackets can like kind of make you build bad habits. So do you want to like speak about that a little bit yourself?
Honestly, yeah, in terms of like using a racket that isn't a good fit for you, like this year I kind of ventured into, I wanted to try out using a little bit of a heavier racket because I was like,
Sure.
I'm getting older. I'm a big boy, I can handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been lifting, right?
After
You've been hitting the gym.
Yeah, I'm hitting the gym. You guys can't tell because I haven't gone in a couple months, but yeah, I ventured into the 88D Pro after trying both the 88S Pro and the D Pro. Yeah. So this guy here, it is a very, very good racket. I think I don't have the proper technique to be using it because if I'm playing really, really well on the day of and I have good shoulder like mobility, this is fantastic. It delivers so much power.
Yeah.
While not being like super, super heavy. And also, I feel like the drives are like pretty good with this for how much power it delivers in the back. That being said, on days where I can't deliver that much like swing speed, I think I like have injured my rotator cuff a little bit trying to use this. Which for me, I've transitioned now to using Arc 77 Pro, or sorry, Astrox 77 Pro.
Yeah.
So I've basically gone back a step and that one's a lot more comfortable.
Right.
But now having like extensively used all three, Arcsaber 7 Pro included, I think honestly like the Arcsaber 7 Pro is probably the most comfortable for me. And the reason I say that is because like the reason I changed to an Astrox in the first place was because I was like, oh, I want to get a little bit more, something that's going to give me more power in the backcourt.
Yeah, sure.
Something that with like basically a little bit more smash, a little more bite.
Right.
But what I realized was, yes, you can get more, I guess, like of a stable hit with like a more heavy racket, but you have to swing that much faster to get it there.
Yeah. You have to put more effort into.
So if you ask anybody, any of the people that I regularly play with, I don't think they would say that my smashes have gotten stronger from me switching from that racket to this one. The Arcsaber 7 Pro to the Astrox 88D Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is my first time using an 88D Pro. I've always used the S version of the series. So
yeah. Well, I think you touched on something interesting there, which is like the fine print that some people don't realize about switching to heavier rackets is that like, people like to talk about power and power rackets and whatever, but like you say, heavier rackets also take more effort to swing. And then if you take more effort to swing them, that actually can destabilize your technique, which can also take away power. So at the end of the day, my thoughts as a racket scientist, as someone who's owned, I think like almost like 90 rackets at this point in my lifetime. Not right now. I don't have that many right now, but I've owned a lot of rackets. And so just for the viewers, one of the reasons why I started this channel and why I consider myself the racket scientist is because my technique, the way that I swing rackets is very adaptable. And so basically for almost all of the 90 rackets that I've ever owned, I test them until I figure out the proper way to swing them, right? And so I think when it comes down to it, the difference in rackets and when we talk about generating power and stuff, I think it comes down a lot to the style of the swing, right? And like the way that you like generate power, right? Like whether the racket likes to load up and whether your swing kind of supports that. And then if you're jumping from one style to the other, there's definitely going to be a period of adjustment, but you're also kind of liable to it's also liable to like maybe like hurt you a little bit, but both in like a physical and like a figurative sense. Yeah. Where and especially if we're talking about the jump from like Arc 7 Pro to like 88D Pro, this is a racket that's, I would say, noticeably stiffer. I wouldn't say significantly.
I would say, yeah, I think you're right on that. You'll definitely feel it.
But like the, I mean, I think it's basically undisputed that like the things like the balance are different and stuff, but yeah, so I mean, but yeah, let's talk about this one because another thing we want to talk about is rackets we use in 2024 and then new rackets in 2024. And I don't remember if the 88 S&D Pro came out in Q4 of 2023 maybe.
It might have been the tail end of last year.
Yeah. But in terms of like when people actually started getting these rackets and playing with them, that was mainly in 2024, and so that's why I wanted to talk about these here. Have you had a chance to use the 88S?
Yeah, actually. The only reason I went with the D Pro is it's a very, very, I think, honestly, looking back, it's a little bit of a stupid reason. But for me, because the 88S Pro is a little bit shorter, and like I've never ever thought that, I thought the whole racket length thing was a little bit gimmicky for how much length they're actually taking off.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take off more, obviously we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you take off like, you know, what they're saying is like what, 10 millimeters? It's about a centimeter.
Yeah.
I'd never felt the difference between my regular 88S from the original and your standard racket that was a little bit longer, right?
Right.
This generation, for some reason, I really felt it.
Yeah.
And switching between an Arc 7 Pro and an 88S Pro, I felt like if I wasn't using the 88S Pro for an entire week, I couldn't get used to the shaft being like so much shorter.
Short.
That being said, when I was using it, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of regret going the 88D Pro route. I also probably went the 88D Pro route because I thought the racket looked better. And this being a racket channel, I think that's something that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, we're human. We'll just make the choice based on what's cooler.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
you'll make the
Exactly.
what's it, the Alpha Sigma male choice, super Chadwick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna pick the heaviest, strongest thing. But you know, we live and we learn. Like, I'm not gonna do that again.
Right.
But yeah, I think the 88S Pro, like, honestly, maybe better than the original.
Really?
Super responsive, like super crispy. I think it has the same issue. It lacks a tiny bit of power in the backcourt.
Sure.
But like, for how much power you get for how fast it is, I think it's like a fantastic trade-off. Like, you're not gonna feel like sometimes when you're using a Nanoflare and Arcsaber, you feel like a little bit under-equipped or like undergunned in the backcourt. But with the 88S Pro, I think it was really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just to like kind of high-level summary, like the reason I didn't like it was just because if I had to switch to another racket, because like, you know, strings break, you have to borrow your friend's racket. I didn't want to be like floundering with the difference in length, pretty much.
No, that's definitely true. I actually have my 700 Pro in my bag. I'm gonna grab it right now, even though it's
kind of. You want to grab that the Auraspeed 100X as well?
Oh, you have that?
No, yours.
Oh, I didn't bring it today.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I knew I was forgetting something. Okay, anyways,
it's fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with your evaluation of the 88S. It's I think both are really good rackets. So what happened for me was like I happened to be in Tokyo around March, I think.
Okay.
It was in the spring. And this was kind of like when the racket was still new, and so I really wanted to look for like a JP code because I thought that would be really great to get one. And I couldn't find the 88D Pro anywhere. It was completely sold out of every single shop I went to. It was that popular.
Yeah.
And I know why, because right now this is probably one of the most, if not the most popular Yonex rackets out there, right? Like people love this racket. Like the pros do. Like people at the gym do. Like this is a fantastic racket. Yeah. This is the 88D Pro, by the way, not the S. And you can tell by kind of looking at the top. Like the S Pro is black on top, and then like if there's a silver tip, then that's the D Pro from far away.
They're just inversed.
Yeah, they're inverted colors. So I picked up the S because I was able to find that, and then I would play with it, and then. About a month or two after that, I had some friends, acquaintances go to Japan, and they were shopping for rackets too. They also couldn't find the 88D Pro, but they went to lunch, and they went back to the shop, and I don't remember which shop this was. And then the guy was just like, oh, we literally just got the shipment of 88D Pro. And then they just bought it for me right there. So that's this racket. So this is also JP code 88D Pro. Yeah, so I have both S and D Pro that are JP coded, as in I bought them in Japan. And you know, that's a whole rabbit hole. We're not going to talk about that right now. But so yeah, I was able to test them back to back, and I had a very similar evaluation to you, where like the S is extremely maneuverable, right? So when we're talking about racket characteristics, right, a lot of people like to talk about speed rackets, right? And we like to talk about that as rackets that swing really fast, or like we can move them around very fast. But
like
I don't.
The sharp frames.
Yeah. like you know, like Nanoflare 700 Pro, right? Like this. But what I think I don't think actually that speed is a very productive way to frame it, right? Because it's like speed can mean a lot of different things, right?
Sure.
And it can refer to different aspects of the racket that are maybe not that related to each other. For example, like I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to create my evaluation heuristics, but I think that I would categorize handling, right? The way that you can maneuver the racket just kind of in a vacuum. And so that includes something like transitioning from offense to defense, right? Like drive, going for drive strokes, being able to switch grips and stuff. And so headlight rackets kind of help you a little bit in that regard, right? Because you have less basically momentum in the racket head to disrupt you from maneuvering the racket like that. So handling is one. And then I also find that categorizing racket head acceleration as a different feature. And like you could argue both of those are speed, but and in some rackets like the NanoFlare 700 Pro, like they come hand in hand, but in some rackets they're not quite the same, right?
Sure.
You can have a racket that handles really well, but doesn't necessarily accelerate that quickly when you're swinging it, right? And the reason I bring that up is because with the 88S, we know that that's a head-heavy racket. It's slightly head-heavy. But it is still designed to be a power racket, which I hate that term. Like I don't like that term. But what that means is basically it has a rounded frame, which allows, and it has features which allow it to load up power in the shaft. And I think at its core, that's what power rackets are supposed to be.
It's like the boxier frame.
Exactly.
It's
So
like got that more robust feeling.
So it gives it that like kind of air resistance and inertia. And you'll notice that both the 88S and D have the power assist bumper at the top, right? Which is like just a little extra weight to kind of help it load up. And the S has that too, right? So what I mean by that is that by being a little bit shorter, right, you get that maneuverability that you do from a headlight racket. However, when it comes to swinging the racket, it still loads up like a head heavy, like a power racket traditionally. Now, don't get me wrong, because it's maneuverable, it does accelerate more quickly than you might expect from something like the 88D. However, the way that it loads up, right, and then its kind of swing profile is what I call it, kind of matches more closely to those of the power rackets, and that's what I think is specific about the 88S, and like why you say it's hard to adapt from one to another, because people are used to maneuvering and that like kind of that acceleration of the racket during the power stroke being linearly correlated, and then you're kind of breaking that, right? But you're taking different features from different types of rackets and we're combining them, and so we kind of create this like unique beast that like doesn't really exist in any other racket. Like is that fair to say that you don't really get that kind of handling?
I think it's an interesting thing. I would say like it kind of even goes back into like the, I don't know, like I don't want to get too corporate, but like like if you think about like the product concept of like why Astrox became a thing versus Voltric, like you said it right there, like they wanted a racket that was going to be maneuverable and still deliver power in the backcourt, right? And the way they did that was, I don't know like how much I believe of like the whole like basically the Astrox series compared to the Voltric, which was the legacy series for head heavy rackets. It's supposed to be more of like a counterbalance system. So when you're doing drives, it's going to feel lighter and more maneuverable. And when you go to smashes and you're using the full basically range of it, because it's got like a basically
more tip heavy.
Exactly. Yeah. It's got more weight on the end of it.
And the edges.
It'll move faster for the swing, for the full swings. And with the 88S Pro, I can kind of say the same thing. Like I felt it was an extremely good all around racket. And definitely like didn't feel like it was lacking in any one area. So
I would say that like we were saying about the 77 Pro and stuff, that it's a good entry point to. I actually would say that the 88S is a pretty fair entry point racket too, just because it's so maneuverable. What that means is that it's actually really easy to time your shots, and I think that helps a lot. Also, it's got like a large feature. So let's talk about actually that's a good segue. So let's talk about the feature differences between the two rackets.
The S&D Pro?
Which unfortunately I didn't bring it, but it's not like you can really see it from that far away.
If you like spin it really fast, it looks like both.
Exactly. We have both. So let's talk about the obvious, right? Which is the overall length. Okay. So like, how does that affect the difference between these rackets. Right?
Yeah. For me, like I think one really cool thing that you're able to do is like pick up a racket and adjust and fine tune how you hit to that racket.
Yeah.
I think like the reason why we work so well as like a pair when we talk about rackets is because I'm actually very opposite from you. I think I have a very like I'm not saying my swing is very good by any means, because like it's something that I'm like actively working on is like my overhead swing.
Yeah.
But I think I have a very consistent swing.
Yeah.
If you watch like 100 of my matches, you'll notice like my swing timing is like whether like regardless of the contact point or when I'm hitting or whatever, it's not fantastic. But I think the great thing is like I hit it the same time every single time.
Right.
Which for me is like for when I'm reviewing rackets, like it helps because I have like a standard baseline of what to go off of.
Yes. Yeah.
When it came to the 88S and D Pro, in general, the 88S Pro it feels like a more buttoned up version of the 77 Pro.
Okay.
Like basically like a little bit
like tightened up and cleaned up.
exactly like almost like a tighter suspension on the car. You know, after you air up your tires, just a little bit tighter.
Right.
That's how I felt about the 88S Pro versus the 77 Pro. The 88D Pro for me felt like a completely different beast.
Yeah.
The weighted tip that you mentioned in the 88D Pro, I don't know if it's because of the extra length. I don't know if it's because it's a bit stiffer than the 88S Pro. I don't know if they're actually different stiffness specs, but I felt like it was stiffer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that extra little like power assist bumper at the top, I felt like made that thing into like a sledgehammer.
It actually makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you test this back to back with, like you say, the Voltric rackets, or like you really feel that like kind of what do they call it again? The like vortex assist, like
I have no dude. That is like
Yonex has a term for this whole idea of like end loading the rackets.
It's basically just
Astrox
like
rackets, but yeah, no.
This part goes zoom.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I agree that that feature is way more apparent in the 88D Pro. Actually, I think out of all of the Astrox rackets, I think it's probably the most apparent to me. Yeah, like maybe the 99 Pro.
Yeah, so like full disclosure, I've played with the 99 and I was just like my arm feels like it's gonna fall off.
Yeah,
so I just like I'm not gonna give that many opinions to the 99.
Right,
but
sure. 88S is like you kind of pick it up and it feels like kind of a slight heavy racket, and then like when you're just holding it and swinging it around, you don't really notice that. But when you start to play with it, I think the maneuverability and the large sweet spot starts to become painfully apparent because you just hit everything, right? Like you don't even try, but like when it comes to drives or defense or like cutoffs, like if you try to go for something, you will get it.
Yeah.
And that's the craziest part about that racket is that it's just so maneuverable. Like once you adjust to the length, right? Because you're gonna miss hit for like I mean it depends how long it takes you to adjust, but for me it took like a couple of sessions, like maybe an hour or two to adjust to the length. But once I adjusted to it, like I was getting like the craziest reaction shots. Like I would just do front court defense. Like I would just lift it, just crouch in the front court, and then like they would smash at me, and I would just like get it.
Gremlin,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Defense.
Yeah. Like you're not supposed to get away with that shit, right? And so it's very apparent that maneuverability, and it makes it great for attacking at the front court, I think, right?
I mean, that's what it's literally built for.
It's literally built for that, right? But I will say, though, that I also had a little bit of trouble attacking from the backcourt, and I actually had more trouble with it than with the 77 Pro, because like with the 77 Pro, the way that it loads up is something that actually feels pretty natural to me.
If someone said badminton racket, and this is like in the context of like an actual like good usable badminton racket, the thing I would like think of immediately is the Astrox 77 Pro, like the bog standard, like the quintessential racket.
Yeah, which is why it sucks that it's really ugly.
Don't even get me started on that. Also, I was like an Aerobite boost user, which is yellow and like there's red and black too, but there's yellow and black strings.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Look at this.
Holy holy. Yeah, I think if you compare the three, the 77 Pro, the 88S Pro, and the 88D Pro, I would actually say like if you were going to switch between two in the middle of a session, the 77 Pro and the 88D Pro, all you have to adjust is expecting like how much flex you're going to feel when you like, especially for overheads, just how much flex you're going to feel when you swing versus, and you won't have to change how you play too much. Whereas the 88S Pro and the 88D Pro, I feel like there's a lot of learning curve that you have to like actively like tweak when you're playing.
Right.
But yeah, no, the 77 Pro I think is a little bit more capable from the back, but For me, my only drawback is in the drive game, it feels a tad sluggish.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because it's a head heavy. They're not the most head heavy, but they are still biased towards head heavy. So then you have that little bit of, extra delay when you go for those drives. Whereas the S&D Pro, because they're that tad bit stiffer, when you're doing those drives, they whip right back to the original position.
And by the way, we're not saying that the 77 Pro is like a super sluggish racket.
Not
it's
even
just
a-
that
not even
it's
close
just
to
that the S&D Pro are really responsive.
They're so fast.
Like they have really direct handling.
Yeah.
And only in the face of I guess nanoflare rackets, I guess is.
I would say.
But even then,
Yeah.
they're right up there. But yeah, going back to S&D Pro, why I had trouble with that is, so I agree with what you're saying. Was in terms of the timing of loading up power in the 77 and the 88D Pro. To me, they feel similar, in terms of the rhythm. Okay. Effectively, they do feel different, right? Because the 88D, you do have to put a little more effort into that, right? And you have to be expecting that snap to be a little, right, because it's stiffer. But in terms of the timing, you're right. I didn't really have to adjust my timing at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Now with the 88S, that's where I had trouble because the timing is so much quicker. It wasn't meant to be a powerful attacking racket from the backcourt. However, we do know some people that prefer it, that generate power better with that racket just because their swing style. And this is what I'm talking about, by the way, when I say that swing styles are what make the power and what make a racket feel comfortable, and why I don't like the term power racket, because it kind of a lot of it comes down to how people generate power.
And I think one key thing to think about there is I also don't really like the term power racket, because if you look at some of the best smashers in the world, Wang Qilin, for example, for years used a nanoflare 700.
700, yeah.
Which is I was using that, and I was like, wow, this racket feels so good for defense.
Yeah.
And this guy's dropping 400 kilometer per hour, just
exactly.
He didn't win the Olympics twice for no reason, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
He's got insane smash. Now he's using a 1000Z.
Yeah.
Which for
makes
those
a little more sense.
For the Redditors, they'll be like, yeah, it's more powerful. But
yeah.
I honestly think if you have good string tension and any modern racket that's built okay, right? It all comes down to what's going to be most comfortable for the player.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the end goal is you're going to generate whatever generates the most head speed for you is going to be the most powerful smash.
Right.
And for me, I think right now if I had to pick one racket that's going to give it the best smash, I'd probably pick an Arcsaber 7 Pro or maybe the 88D Pro if I'm feeling good, but definitely not a 100ZZ or a 1000Z.
Yeah.
Even though those have a technically higher peak or whatever you could say, it's hugely dependent on how they play.
Right.
So
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the 88S, I theoretically I know how to generate power with that racket, but I personally don't have the technique or swing style to execute that. We do know some people that prefer that racket, that are more powerful with that racket, and those are people that are really physically strong. I think, and they are what I haven't really developed a term for this. They're basically the type of people who like to push through swings, right? They're able to accelerate the racket really hard in the swing, and I think you need that to actually generate real power with the 88S. Now, I'm not saying that you need that in order to use the racket, because there are totally valid reasons to select that racket, even if you can't generate that sort of power. Because if you just want to be a front court wizard. More on comparing them directly. So let's talk about specs. And this is where I kind of wish that I had brought my 88S, but
let's just pretend this is
I
your
did
88S.
well. Okay, no, I measured them side by side.
Oh, that's
and so I actually know some of the actual differences. And so one of the first things that you'll notice is that the 88D has a smaller head.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so what that translates to is on the S, right? We talked about having a very approachable sweet spot. It's really easy to time.
Target logo.
You can always just hit it. And you will very seldom
And I love that.
Yeah. It's so, and that's why I think it's a really good racket for kind of, an entry point racket, because it's just so easy to sweet spot and stuff. Now, obviously the 88D is more difficult. Do you find it difficult overall to play with a head this small?
I think obviously the answer is yes. It is more difficult, especially if you're not a pro who can nail the sweet spot every single time.
Yeah. And
it's not in those overheads where you have a little bit more time. And by the way, we're talking, I'd say between me and Eric, we're gonna talk about doubles 95% of the time, just because we don't
Right.
really play singles seriously.
Yeah.
So just for the context of all our conversations, just keep in mind we're talking about doubles.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking about like what I call like the old style like net lift combination in doubles, when you're in the back, I think if you have time, you're not gonna feel like 88D Pro is gonna have that small of a sweet spot. You're gonna really notice it in defense,
Yeah.
drive game, and like any mid-court shot where you have to basically hit like a decent shot, but you don't necessarily have all the time in the world to like line up your shot,
Yeah.
and swing how you want. One thing that I wanted to like talk about real quick was like, for people who don't know, the smaller the racket head, and typically just like the smaller the sweet spot is, the more concentrated you're gonna have out of that sweet spot. I'd say like a gross general oversimplification, but
Yeah.
like in general, if you have a smaller head, basically the ceiling for how much power that racket can produce is probably higher.
Higher. Yeah.
But playing with it is probably going to be a lot more difficult
Much more
because
difficult,
yeah, on like those 90% of shots that you don't have a ton of time to line up, you're gonna struggle a little bit more, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
We know that 100ZZ and 1000C they have pretty small heads.
Oh yeah.
It's part of what makes them very difficult, like very powerful, but very difficult.
Not only the head, but like the shaft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh whoa! What are we talking about now?
Yeah. No, we'll talk about that next. Actually, that's a good segue. And I was just comparing because I was curious, so I put these next to each other. And the 77 Pro does have bigger head, but it's very minute. Like it's only like a couple millimeters.
Yeah.
So I was actually surprised. I thought it was going to be.
I thought it'd be
a fair amount bigger.
Yeah.
But it's like almost unnoticeable. So what you were saying, where it's like harder to hit the sweet spot in like actual doubles, like actual gameplay, right? What do we do to mitigate that? Is
train.
well, okay, we train, but it's like these rackets that have these small sweet spots and like small heads, they tend to be more maneuverable.
Sure.
Right? Like you tend to be able to like maneuver them like more efficiently and like more accurately. And like that's what lets you hit the sweet spot more accurately when you're under pressure. And that's the next thing that I want to highlight about the 88D Pro is that because it's the kind of the backcourt, brother of the 88S, you would expect it to take a certain penalty in the maneuverability department or whatever. But I was surprised because I use this racket. You'd expect it to be like maybe like, I don't know, 30% slower or like more sluggish.
Okay, that's
stuff.
a crazy
Well,
percentage.
I know that's a crazy percent, but it is not far behind the 88S in terms of maneuverability though. And that's what really surprised me is that the 88S is a total like magic wand, right? Like you can swing that thing, you can hit. The 88D Pro is very close behind.
In terms of maneuverability?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, and just like shout out like Justin, Justin.
Yeah,
like the one who's been borrowing your 88D Pro.
He's been borrowing. He's actually gripped this up the.
Yeah, he grips up the thing here.
Yeah, okay.
I was talking to Justin, and Justin's like a pretty decent player.
Yeah,
I would
so
say.
yeah, Justin is well certainly better than us. Like he's
I can take Justin.
Just kidding. Yeah.
No, Justin's probably fundamentally like much more sound than me and Eric.
Extremely, yeah, he's really good.
But the racket he was using before, I thought this was super interesting. He was using a Victor JetSpeed S12, the original, not the blue and white like remake with the Freecore handle. He was using the original one. Kind of looks similar to the Arc7 Pro actually, with that gray and yellow color scheme. That racket is really known for being like not like super stiff, so like somewhat flexible, and super fast in the front court. Like you can whip that thing like for the craziest drives, right? He told me that after switching to the 88D Pro, he thought the 88D Pro on just like the most regular, like he's using Nano G 98. I think like he strings like 27 or 28, but he did the same strings on both. And he thought that the 88D Pro was a lot more maneuverable, but he actually had less power in the smash compared to the JetSpeed S12.
Interesting.
And like we were talking about, like for the player, that's super weird, right? Because like the marketing tells you, okay, this is the power racket, that's the speed racket. He told me for defense drives, the 88D
really
Pro was this guy, right? And he said, but I just feel like I'm lacking more power. It's like not that heavy. I was like, what are you saying?
Very strange.
So it's all up to the person, and it could be like,
it really is.
There are also like manufacturing just like discrepancies between rackets. Like you can pick up like 10 rackets from Yonex, and they could all be different weights and different balance points. I think the reason why I prefer Yonex over every other brand is because their quality control. Like if you pick 100 rackets and if you average all of them out, Yonex will have basically like the tightest bell curve. Compared to like Victor rackets, like I think they're getting better now, but like 3 years
Yeah.
ago, like
Especially their first batches.
I think their first and second batch of DriveX 9Xs, and I knew this because I was working in the shop and I was stringing tons of these a day. Like, even the grommet distance between the top grommets, like some of them were making like a shape like this.
Oh.
And they're supposed to be level, right?
Yeah.
It was going like this.
Oh,
So you had
that's
like
crazy.
like terrible quality control. That's a
Yeah.
total tangent, but
Yeah.
in terms of maneuverability, I mean, I do think the 88D Pro is like a fantastic choice. And yeah, like we were saying, if you want to set yourself up with like a little bit of like a heavier racket for more like stable, a stable hitting option, you can also lower the tension on your strings to make the sweet spot
Yeah,
bigger.
exactly. Actually, so you touched on something really important that I was going to mention too, which is the stability. And like, because people talk about like, you know, head weight and stuff being for generating power. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the head weight itself doesn't generate the power. Now, we already talked about swing style, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about do you use that head weight to your advantage? Some people do and some people don't, right? And if you gave someone who prefers to like smash with headlight rackets like Wang Qilin, if you gave him a head heavy racket, he would probably be worse, right? Just right off the bat, right?
Or he wouldn't because he's Wang Qilin.
Or maybe we will never know. But like, I mean, I would like to think that he's using the racket he prefers to use, right? But you know, a good reason of why you would select this racket, like, you know, a lot of people are going to select this racket because they want a more powerful, like, you know, to be more powerful.
I mean, that's what I did.
Right.
Didn't work out for me.
But I mean, it's a total valid reason to choose a racket that's a little heavier or has more head weight for the stability, right? Because like head weight basically by its nature is means that the head of the racket has more inertia, which means that it in theory it remains more stable through the swing, like and less kind of affected by like outside factors or like you know, bad hand technique or whatever. And so at the end of the day, you know, that could be something that, okay, maybe it's less powerful because I'm not able to like, you know, wind up and generate as much force with it.
Maybe he thinks because like the JetSpeed S12 is very whippy.
Yeah.
It's super. It's like you swing and the head is like back here.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you don't have a super fast swing, and I don't think Justin like had like he has a decent smash, but it's not like world ending, right? I think that's like a great case. Like he probably was using a lot of that whip from the JetSpeed S12 that he's not getting from the 88D Pro. Yeah,
but I think it's fine. I mean, he's more of a control-based player anyway, so it's like, I don't think
so.
that he. So let's actually move down here because you mentioned like the shaft too. So I actually measured this and
like the diameter.
Well, no, the length,
okay.
right? And well, I want you to tell me like what you think between the S and the D, like what the shaft length difference is between those two rackets.
I would call it a centimeter or more between the 88S Pro and the D Pro, just because I think that's the thing that messed me up the most was not the total length. It was how long the handle was and how short the shaft was.
Yeah. So what surprised me is that the 88S actually has the longer shaft of the two.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, I know. That surprised me too, because you wouldn't expect that, right?
Wait, really?
Yes, it has the longer shaft, but not by a lot, by a few millimeters.
Okay, so it's negligible.
And if I'm wrong about this, I'm going to cut this out. But I'm pretty sure, because I held them side by side, and I was surprised. It's just that the handle on the 88D Pro is way longer. It is over a centimeter longer.
Oh, the handle's longer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The handle's longer on the 88D Pro, but the shaft is shorter.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's another reason to get the 88S Pro over the D Pro. You'll save 10% on your super grips.
Yeah. It's not like the super grip is a fixed length or anything.
Towel grip users are rejoicing.
Well, so let's talk about the shaft length a little bit because I've written an article about this and I'll link this if people actually care, but I don't think most of our viewers have like good reading comprehension, so probably not good. But I'm just gonna summarize this for a second. Shaft length is, I think, a very underrated and misunderstood feature of rackets. So I'm not gonna go too deep into it because I could talk a long time. But in short, no pun intended. The one thing that it affects that people will notice is effective stiffness, right?
Yeah.
In other words, like when you swing a racket, so there's this objective stiffness to racket shafts, and that's like the actual material in the shaft, like how much that actually bends. Okay, that is a fact. Okay, that is an objective thing that can be measured in the factory or in the field. Okay, you also have. That's going to show up on the audio, by the way, the clonk.
The clonk, yeah, I hate it.
Yeah, but I want you to imagine like a shorter shaft like will not displace as far as a longer one.
Yeah, just think about physics. Like if you had a steel beam that's like this short versus like
It won't
a
bend
mile
as
long,
much,
right?
even if it's made of the same material.
Exactly.
Okay, and so the shaft length is actually really important in factoring in the effective stiffness of the racket. Now, when I say effective stiffness, I mean when you actually swing the racket, how stiff does it feel, right? Because it could be that a racket with a short shaft but a flexible material can feel stiffer just because the shaft is shorter, right? And so I think that causes a lot of misconceptions because I've heard it all when it comes to the 100ZZ. I've heard everything. I've heard this is the stiffest like fucking
Yeah.
racket I've ever used.
Yeah.
I've also heard people say this racket is way too flexible. None of these people understand like what's actually going on here.
For me, I hate that racket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general for me, and we can talk about this. Like I picked up an Auraspeed 100X Ultra. That thing has the slimmest shaft I've ever played with, and it's thinner than the 100ZZ.
Yeah.
And it feels extremely stiff, like you're playing with like a plywood board almost. But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention with the 100ZZ is like, yes, a lot of people will talk about it being like the stiffest thing, but then other people will talk about it being like, oh, it's stiff, but it'll actually like bend the way I want it.
Yeah.
You know, which I think is like.
And the reason I brought that up is because, again, we're going back to talk about the 88 S&D Pro, where the 88D is, in terms of balance, I actually think the D Pro is more head heavy. It's not that much, though, actually.
Compared to the S?
Yeah, it's only a difference of like a few millimeters. It's like maybe 297 versus like 294 or
Do you want to
something.
explain like balance points real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah. So balance points, when we talk about balance points in the field, we give a measurement, and the measurement is if you balance the racket like on your finger or on the edge of a table, you would measure from the balance point, like where it's balancing, towards the end of the handle. And then that is the value that I'm talking about. So this is 297 millimeters, right?
Then obviously this will be different for each racket, even if it's like a 10 ADD Pros. It'll be a little bit of discrepancy, but yeah, on average.
Usually we say plus or minus like a couple millimeters, right? And 297 is about slight head heavy towards
barely
head heavy.
Yeah, barely head heavy, I would say.
Yeah. And so you can see a higher value means more head heavy because if I move my finger away from the shaft, right, that kind of implies that the head is heavier.
And by the way, when I see people like doing this at the club to tell like how head heavy something is, like it's total BS because you cannot like the balance point would move from like here to here, for example, for head heavy to headlight.
Yeah,
it's very minute.
It's very. That's why we measure in millimeters.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's very difficult to tell just from eyeballing it. So that's why you would want to measure it. And so, as I was saying, like the 88D is a little more head heavy, but
you said 297?
Not by that much. Mine measured 297. Yeah, that's correct. The way that the shaft length difference manifests itself is that the shorter shaft on the 88D Pro is kind of designed to support. So imagine you had the same shaft length, right, or a longer
Between
one.
The S and D.
Yeah, exactly. And so because this is a longer racket, that would actually reduce the handling characteristics of the 88D Pro.
Yeah, it would become. I mean, yeah, you basically get like a noodle.
It would be more wiggly, right?
Yeah.
It would be closer to the 77 because if you make that shaft longer, you make that response time between the head and the handle longer as well. And so why I think this has a shorter shaft actually is to retain those handling characteristics, one, and two, to tighten up the power stroke on it, right? Because if it had the same length or longer, then it would be slower to respond in the power stroke, but they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? And where they're adding all that length back in is in the handle. So like this has quite a long handle. I don't know if it's actually as long as.
Is that a BladeX?
I think well, it is a BladeX, but this has very similar measurements to 1000Z, which we're going to talk about. I don't know if this handle is quite as long as the 100ZZ or 1000Z, but it's pretty long. It allows you to have more flexibility with where you hold the racket, first of all, right? You hold it high, and this is part of why I think the 88D is just more versatile, is like if you hold it high, it has very similar handling characteristics to the 88S.
Yeah.
So aside from the smaller head, like you can handle it and maneuver it in a very similar, almost the same way. Whereas if you moved it to the bottom, you're getting this extra over 1 centimeter of length, which means you have so much more leverage to like swing and hit this with.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So in general, I would say, and I recommend this in my article too, is the bottom line for these two rackets is that if you're like a more intermediate starting out and you want something easier to play with, the 88S is going to be probably the better option. Otherwise, if you're someone who's what we call advanced, or basically someone who like can compete, right, who plays competitively, the 88D Pro is generally going to be the more versatile option, unless you specifically know that the style of the 88S is something that you want, right? Either for the front court, like the ability to like cut things off and maneuver in the front court, or if you know the way that you generate power is more suited to the 88S.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think the 88D Pro will be generally like better for most people.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's pretty indicative, even like when you look at pros who are using these rackets. If we talk about singles for a second, like I mean, the 88D Pro is definitely made for like the backcourt doubles. Like that's how it's marketed.
Right.
But if you look at, and this is like one example, so obviously it's just one sample, but like Kunlavut Viditsar.
Yeah.
Kunvalut.
Yeah.
Kunlavut. I mean, he plays with the 88D Pro.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, Victor Axelsen for a weird stint in 2018 was using an Astrox 88S. That was bizarre.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, he switched from the Doorsy strike to that, and then he was shitting the bed for a few tournaments.
Funny,
so went back. But yeah, like I mean, I've seen a few singles players actually use the 88Ds.
There are a few. Yeah, there are a few.
Whereas 88Ss, you would never see them in that
Yeah.
singles arena, and I think that kind of tells us like what it handles well in the flat game when you need to play flat in singles, but when you need that extra power, which and like
you really
longer,
need it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you have longer, like basically longer period of time to do a big swing, you're just gonna get so much more out of the D Pro compared to the S Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in doubles, when you have like probably like half the amount of time to react, the 88S Pro, I'd say 90% of your interactions are gonna be far superior than the 88D Pro.
Yeah.
Just because of how it handles.
Right. Exactly.
If you were watching this and you're intermediate, even to advanced, I would say the 88S Pro is probably going to be more friendly for most people.
Yeah, as an entry point. Yeah, so that's a good point too. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, let me say my piece about the Redson stuff, because like my original question was, what we've been actually using. Yeah. A lot of the viewers, like, if they've been watching my videos, they'll probably recognize the name Redson, and you as well, because they sold that at the shop at Pro Racket, and which is, I think, probably the only store in like North America that like actually sells that brand.
Yeah, they're very like
niche,
very Taiwan pilled.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's PC to say or not, but like, that's
it's fine.
It's super Taiwan to have a Redson racket.
So Redson is a Japanese designed and Taiwanese manufactured.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I think for marketing purposes, yes. I would venture to say that almost nothing is done in Japan and they just use it for the branding. I think it's almost 100% done in Taiwan.
Which is fine.
Which is Taiwan makes good stuff.
Taiwanese money. Redson is a bit of a niche brand, and I won't talk too much about it because like I could go on for a long time. But I think I've been using a lot of the rackets specifically in tournament situations across 2024. And what I like about those rackets is that unlike a lot of the top of the line Yonex and Victor rackets, which are kind of designed, a lot of them are designed for like, I guess, performance optimization, right? Like they're designed with pros in mind and stuff, and like we can buy them, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's like
I know where you're going with
this.
Yes.
And the thing that I like about Redson rackets is that they're designed for amateur players or with them in mind, and so they kind of off the rack, they are really approachable to like just players like you and me who just like kind of play at the club. And like they're not flashy, they're not like super stiff or like super powerful or anything. But they're just so easy to use, and they have like such a good feeling when you use them, due to some of the features that they develop in their rackets. And the reason why I use them in tournament is because when you're in a stressful situation, sometimes having the easiest thing to use is the best thing to use, right? It's like
stay loose.
I don't exactly like I don't need the most powerful racket. I don't need the fastest racket. I just need something that will let me hit the sweet spot consistently. So I don't like lose points in a gym I'm not familiar with, in conditions where like I had to wake up early and I don't feel great.
Like your body's stiff,
nervous.
you're nervous.
Exactly. And so I mean that's really all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big, I think I like Redson rackets. I don't use any. Yeah,
I lent you one earlier this year.
Yeah, I thought it
2024.
was that the rigidity.
Yeah, this is the
08?
RG08.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we were saying earlier, between like the Astrox 77 Pro and the like Arcsaber 7 Pro, I would say if you rate those like a 5, or if you give those like a default just numbering scale of like 5 out of 10,
Yeah.
they're very like neutral, easy to use.
Yeah.
And then you have softer rackets from there, and then you have harder rackets from there.
Yeah.
I would say Redson, or I'd say Yonex goes from plus or minus, or from 5 plus or minus like 4 or 5. So you can go all the way down to 0 with like a super like weird Astrox 22.
Yeah.
You know, like those like weirdly crazy headlight.
Yeah, I've never used one, but
they're gimmicky.
Yeah.
All the way up to like a Astrox 99 Pro. Like
Right.
the sledgehammer of sledgehammers,
Yep.
right? Whereas I think Redson definitely operates more in like, if we're starting with a 5, you only go plus or minus like 2.
Yeah.
Like the delta for how usable, or like how different the rackets are, is like not huge.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool, because there's so many rackets there for like you said, like amateur players
Right.
and like pros can definitely use these rackets. Like they're quality rackets.
Yeah.
Like if I had to blindly just like throw a dart against a wall and pick a racket from Redson, I think I'd be happy with like 90% of what they offer.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
We're not like sponsored. That'd be cool if we were sponsored by Redson.
Yeah, it
That'd
would
be
be
sick.
would be cool.
But just like having worked in their shop, I know, or in the shop that sold Redson, I know Yonex's warranty policy is very like nebulous. They're like, if you break in the first year,
Yeah.
you can submit it. We might do it. We might not.
Uh-huh.
There's no like real criteria for like what gets replaced and what doesn't.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff does get replaced, but we don't know why. For Redson, they're like, yeah, first 6 months, if you break it, doesn't matter how you broke it, just send it back. The other one will get you a new one. Like you can run over it
Yeah.
with your fucking car.
Yeah.
They'll be like, we'll replace it. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's sick.
Yeah.
Cause like, yeah, if we're amateur players, we're gonna break shit on
Yeah.
accident because
Yep.
we're stupid. Dude, Redson's just doing the right things, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like easy rackets, like non-pretentious, and
Yep.
they're also priced at a point that is like a lot.
Very friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. Like we're talking, you can get a very, very solid racket for like 150 to 200
Yeah.
compared to Yonex, which is like if we're not talking about like how to like save money on Yonex rackets or like how to like budget.
Yeah.
Just like if you bought one off the wall, MSRP, you're talking like 250 to 280.
Yeah.
It's
The
ridiculous.
pro models. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're paying a premium for those nowadays.
So yeah, I think Redson's sick. If you guys haven't, definitely check them out. They have like some really cool like grommetless designs, which make the rackets like super loud. So when you
Yeah.
hit with them, you sound
Like a
you
god.
can tell when you're hitting the
Yeah.
sweet spot.
Yeah. Which is really important, by the way, for like
Beginner players, yeah.
feedback and like figuring out how to
Yeah,
play.
like when you have a good swing, you want to know based on like the
The
feel
response,
and the sound. Like like I think having like loud racket is actually
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
We can get a little bit more.
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
later
We'll,
episode, I feel like.
yeah. We can do our own video on that like at some point.
On
Okay.
the Redson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's also talk about this guy, and then we'll move on to yours. Yeah, BladeX. So Li-Ning rackets. I'm a pretty big Li-Ning fan right now. I have a lot of Li-Ning rackets. I think I have more than like 15 Li-Ning rackets alone.
Yeah. I'm a Li-Ning hater.
Yeah, and I know you don't own any, but I'm just gonna talk about this real quick. So lately, with its new and updated designs, I feel like Li-Ning has really been kind of painting a target on Yonex.
Yeah.
Right. So a couple of their flagship rackets include like the Axe Force series, the Axe Force 100, and that's one that I don't have today. But what I have here is the BladeX 900 new, because there was an old version,
So they called
the
this
Sun
one
and the
the
Moon.
new.
Yeah. Well, actually, its full name was BladeX 900 Max Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were two versions of that. And then they redesigned this one, so I don't know why they didn't just create like a new model, like do BladeX 1000.
Eclipse.
So I don't really know what they're doing here. But if you look at this racket closely, you can clearly tell that they have it out for Yonex. Because, so I want you to look at this racket and see how much it looks like a nano flare.
Yeah.
Like the frame shape, and you can
So-
compare it to the 700 here. Like,
I think if you look very, very like basically, what Li-Ning always has is like where their grommets sit. It's like the profile of the racket kind of juts out a little bit, like right here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've always noticed this with Li-Ning rackets, especially like if you look at their turbocharging series, 3D
Yeah.
caliber.
Yeah.
Caliber 3D. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, 3D
But like
caliber.
just having strung these, I noticed like they have a very deep groove here.
Yeah.
Not sure what that does or what it's for, but yeah, if you look at the overall shape, like this is very NanoFlare-esque.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got that kind of, from this profile, it's extremely wide.
Yeah.
But from this profile, it's a very, very sharp shape, which means when you swing with it, it feels like it's cutting through the air.
Yeah.
When I play with these kinds of rackets, when I'm playing like defensive shots from below the tape, these are like the fastest, like best feeling rackets. But like, dude, from above the tape,
Yeah.
they feel like they vibrate a lot more.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a fan of.
Right,
but
right, right.
It does look like, I wouldn't even say knockoff, but like NanoFlare competitor.
Yes,
I would say.
Definitely a competitor, which is why I say it's like a targeted attack. So
Right.
it's my personal opinion that I think this was designed and released in response to the 1000Z.
Okay.
Now I need to get them side by side, but I feel like I think this BladeX 900 kind of sits in between the 800 Pro and the 1000Z in terms of. So you'll notice that it has quite a small frame, which is kind of reminiscent of like the 1000Z. And again, I'll have to get them side by side, but like I have a feeling that it because the thing is with the Axforce 100 as well, that one I'm almost certain is like a direct attack on the 100ZZ because they have very similar specifications as well.
The Axforce 100?
Yeah, Axforce 100 has the exact same like shaft length and handle length as 100ZZ, and then the head dimensions are very similar.
Yeah.
It's not the same shape, but they're very similar. So I think kind of what the idea behind the top of the line Li-Ning rackets is, they're looking at these top of the line Yonex rackets and they're like, okay, like people are buying these because like they're really cool. A lot of pro players are using them, but they're not easy for amateur players to use. So I think what they're doing is that they're trying to copy the design and just dial it back a little bit, right? Just make it a little bit easier for normal people to use. And I think that's what this is. Now, I usually don't play with rackets like this. Like stiff headlight rackets are usually not rackets that I play well with this. And I will say that I can't generate like big power with this racket, but in terms of maneuverability and like just continuous attack, right? It's kind of like what you would say the 100X is supposed to be, the Auraspeed 100X, right? It's just continuous attack, and this one's very fun in that regard. But I will say, really like how this looks too. Love the hot pink.
One of the reasons I was like excited about the 88S and D Pro is like I think the colors they used were really, really cool. Aside from that, I think Yonex has been absolutely shitting the bed with designs. Like 77 Pro, dog water. 100ZZ, what in the peppermint fuck? Like candy cane, like what is this? And then the other 100ZZ, same thing. Arcsaber, I think the 11 Pro is kind of cool. 7 Pro is like a Gatorade nightmare.
It's like inoffensive.
Yes.
Mostly. Okay. What do you think about this though?
I don't like this.
You don't like this?
It gives like Bob Ross.
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna make a tree and a mountain. Personally for me, I used the Nano. I haven't actually played with the NanoFlare 700 Pro yet. I'm excited to try this out. But I was a big fan of the original NanoFlare 700 and I used it for a long time. The original design before they did the color swap, I am so upset that they changed it.
You mean the red one?
No, both of them.
The
red and because there was the red and the blue.
And
then they switched it to the red and the blue that made it look like they're made of crayon, basically. Dude, the original NanoFlare 700s were so beautiful. There was that one run with the black and gold NanoFlare 700s. They made them for Ratchanok Intanon.
I don't think I've ever seen that one actually.
It's pretty sick.
Okay, I'll look it up. Later.
Sick. But yeah, I think in general, Li-Ning they put a lot of effort into, and you can tell, like making their rackets look like really sick.
Very nice. The visuals.
I think the Halbertech comes to mind. Not the green and the purple one. I'm not a huge fan of that one.
The pink and blue one.
8000.
Halbertech 8000.
Both of the Axforce 90s or
Tiger and
Dragon. Yeah, both of those are really sick to look at.
Which, by the way, they're coming out with a new Axforce 90 as well this year.
Oh yeah, they're just like consolidating it to one.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Which I will get eventually, but that's for a different story.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed as a stringer was Yonex has typically had, and this is like a weird thing, but like their grommets are very high quality. One company that I love, Mizuno, they make fantastic rackets. The one thing I hate about Mizuno is their grommets suck ass. Like you string them once and the grommets just like basically like shit themselves and like
Yeah.
they'll like pull all the way in.
Yeah.
Li-Ning, I think has arguably like maybe even better quality grommets than Yonex currently. They even have like tiny little Li-Ning logos like printed on each grommet.
They do have that. Yeah.
Which to me just tells me that like they're really really paying attention to like the small
to detail.
details.
Yeah.
Which I think is like just a green flag. And I
So-
think the more like competition that Yonex has,
The better.
the better. Because like Yonex isn't just gonna like be like, oh, you made a better racket than us.
Like
We're gonna go
like,
bankrupt
oh, well,
now.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like their engineers are gonna get off their butts and like really try to make like the
Yeah.
next best thing, right?
Yeah. I will say that in terms of build quality, if you play with Li-Ning rackets long enough, you'll notice a difference in terms of like their grommets may be good, but in general, I would say some of the general construction, like you'll notice like some of the rackets tend to creak a little bit after some time and stuff. And I think where Li-Ning disappoints me the most is probably the consistency of the wood quality in the handle.
Oh, okay.
Is not that great. And so Yonex rackets, if you get like the decent ones that are like US, Canada, Japan code.
Basically anything that's not Sunrise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you're always getting some like really nice wood in the handle. That's machined very nicely. Mizuno also comes to mind.
Yeah.
Excellent wood in the handle. Redson too, actually pretty good.
Yeah, Redson, very consistent.
So all those.
I think Redson's a little softer.
Redson's a little softer.
Yeah.
But like they care. At least it's machined well.
Yeah.
And like they do like a little wood burn pattern that's kind of cute.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like laser
yeah.
ratchet.
Like, but I have to say, out of all the brands, like Li-Ning definitely has the worst consistency when it comes to wood quality in the handle. Now, don't get me wrong, I have seen Li-Ning rackets with like good wood in the handle,
Just inconsistent.
but just like in general, especially the ones you get from China, and I think that's just because the wood suppliers are so inconsistent. Like China's so big that like the batches of wood that they get in their factories probably isn't. But yeah, like I've seen wood. So generally for like a good handle, you want the grain running completely like parallel to the length of the handle with like because if the grain goes like diagonal a little bit, you're gonna get like structural integrity. Like I mean, most people aren't breaking the handle in their wood, but like and like you're gonna get splinters on one side basically.
Yeah, not even that. If we zoom out a little bit and we talk about like Chinese manufacturing of rackets in general.
Yeah.
So Victor in the last I think 4 or 5 years, they switched all their manufacturing from being in Taiwan, and I don't know if they're still doing some in Taiwan and some in China.
Yeah.
But they've transitioned a lot of their manufacturing into doing
in China.
in China.
Yeah.
For me, this was like they're getting better now, like I mentioned, but during that transitionary period, they were it was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, chaos.
And like we have a friend, Ko, he has a few Bravesword 12s.
Yeah.
And these are not the original Bravesword 12s that came out like back when Lee Youngdae and Yu Yeon-sung were using them in like 2014.
Yeah.
These were the reruns that came out probably like 4 years ago, but they have the original design.
Yeah.
But they're made in China. He literally has rackets that have the wrong, like the bevels are uneven.
Oh.
Like, so there's the long bevel here.
Yeah.
Or there's the long face here, and then the two
flat
side faces.
Yeah.
And then on the diagonals, you should have these basically like 45 angle cuts.
Yeah.
He has one that's this long and one that's like this long, basically.
Oh.
And you get a really weird, like off-centered octagon shape.
Yeah.
And that just tells me like their quality control is like not up to snuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a Chinese manufacturing issue or if it's like just like a one-off batch. And this is Li-Ning to Victor, so it's different. But I know there's definitely a difference.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about this guy then. So why don't you tell me a little bit about it? Because I know this is a really cool one.
Yeah, this is not a new racket by any means. I think this came out in like could have been early as like 2017.
Yeah.
But I think it's like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
It's the Victor Auraspeed CY. This racket is just kind of sick because it's white, and I love white rackets. They're getting to a point where it's like getting a little bit boring, but I've had my eye on this racket for a long time, and I was able to pick up a really, really good condition when used.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, swings just like super, super fast. It like cuts through the air really nicely because it has that Auraspeed shape.
Yeah.
But I would say it's flexible enough to where you have a good amount of like, I guess like whip to fall back on. But yeah, for a front court guy, it's pretty fun, and I've been using it. And
All right.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really like about this is like you can do really like fun stuff in the back with like
slicing and
like it maneuvers really really well.
mm-hmm.
But I think this was based off of, I think it's a different design than the Auraspeed 90S, not the 90K, but the 90S that they had a few years back. But it's a little bit more robust. That one I remember playing with the 90S. It was kind of like a weird competitor to the Astrox 88S in my mind, like the Auraspeed 90S and the Auraspeed 90K versus the 88S and the 88D. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, this one has a little bit more of a robust frame compared. So you get like a nice solid feeling compared to a lot of Victor rackets from back in the day when they're like focusing on speed. Yeah. You hit it and you almost feel like the vibration is like shaking your whole body. You're like,
it's like a seizure.
Yeah. But this one, I'd say, doesn't have that as much. Yeah. It was just like a cool find. I've been playing with it. I think this one has a really like high balance point, and it's actually biases a little bit head heavy. Because it does not feel head light at all, but it swings pretty like easily through the air. It's got that nice like crisp swing. And I think like in general, if you're looking for speed rackets, like Victor does make a lot more options for speed rackets compared to Yonex does.
Yep. One of my favorite categories for fun, like not necessarily for tournament play, but like one of my favorite rackets categories for like, playing around having fun is head heavy rackets with speed frames. Yes. Like it's just really fun to just whack things really hard.
Yeah, and when we say speed frames, it's like the frames that are like, they're basically sharper, so you feel like they're slicing. They have less air resistance.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they're far less like stable. Yeah. Like when you hit with them, you definitely have that like gung.
Right. Feeling. Exactly. That's why I say they, maybe not the best tournament rackets, but like they're fun to play with because you can just hit stuff hard and sometimes you don't know where it goes, and that's part of the fun.
I think Li-Ning makes a lot of those.
Li-Ning makes a few, but like
like the 3D calibers.
Oh yeah.
Those are like heavy as.
Yeah.
But they're speed frames.
Those are kind of like last gen though, so they're not very common anymore.
Yeah.
Like Victor makes some.
What do you think?
Okay. Actually, I don't have it here, but this is one that I bought last year as well. The LTD Pro, the Bravesword.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually grew up on Braveswords, but I grew up on even balanced Braveswords.
Okay. So like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. So 10 is what I used primarily back in the day.
Oh gee.
And
gave away your age.
Yeah. Well. It's but I mean, we can talk about how crazy it is that like Victor is still making Braveswords today. In 2024, 2025. They had the 50th anniversary, and they're like, okay, well, they have to be done because it was an anniversary edition. And then they came out with another one, which is the LTD Pro.
Yeah.
And the LTD Pro.
I'm a little over it.
But the LTD Pro is a really fun racket. Again, I don't know. It's definitely not the most accurate or like, the most.
We're talking
precise.
Like the white, red, gold one.
Yes, the precise racket.
Yeah.
Because that thing has a balance point of like over 300, and it has the sword frame.
Yeah.
And so like I've never just like been able to pick up a racket and just like hit stuff so fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like you can just pick it up and you can just smash like the hardest smashes. You have no control over where these smashes go.
No, they're like whipping left. It also has a medium flex shaft.
Yeah,
it's just like
so
noodle.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so fun, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like fun rackets, like that's definitely got to be up there. So
no, I thought it was super funny because like I tried it. I just like swung it around the store and I was like, this feels kind of heavy. And then you picked up a 3U and a 4U, right?
Yeah.
And then you were like, yeah, the balance point's like over 305, and I was like, excuse me, because like for reference, like 305 plus, like if you get to 310, that's like insanely heavy, right?
310 is like Z-Force 2.
Yeah, Z-Force 2, Voltric 80, like Voltric those really, really heavy rackets.
Yep.
And having that on a Bravesword is just like
insane.
Yeah, it's actually insane.
Like they just kind of like, I feel like someone made this racket just as like a meme.
I thought I was gonna pick one up just for the colors because I thought it was like
it looks really cool.
Yeah, like my high school colors were red and gold, so I was like, this was like a little bit like of a homage to that. But I didn't pick one up because I was like, it's too troll.
Yeah,
it's too troll.
I mean, it's fun. Yeah, I mean, only someone like me who like collects rackets for fun would pick up something like that on purpose.
That was a cool one though. Red, white, and gold Bravesword.
Yeah,
but they just keep pumping them out. I kind of wish they would just like stop making new ones and then just go back to the original recipe that they had in like between like 2010 and like 2015.
Yeah.
And just like pump those out.
10 and 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 through 12. Yep.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So recently I've been kind of playing around with different grip variations. I've started to do this thing that I see a lot of like, especially like Korean, Japanese, and Thai pro players doing.
Yeah.
But it's basically like over gripping on the butt of the racket handle.
Yeah.
Basically, all this does for me, I have really sweaty hands, and I sometimes use towel grip, especially in the summer. But like I don't love like between towel grip and polyurethane grips, I don't like how little control I have and like how little feeling I have with towel grips.
Yeah.
Compared to these PU grips. This basically allows me to not have to worry about my racket falling out of my hand or like,
Right. Or like you
flung
yeeting
across.
It, like
Just like
just
accidentally
like chucking it.
Yeah, because I've definitely done that in training before where I
Yeah.
like smashed and then my hand was just too slippery and just whoop.
Yeah.
So it gives me a little bit of like a kind of like a edge don't
Yeah,
grip onto.
safeguard, yeah.
But also like while I'm playing, it gives me like a very like you can tell where it is and
Right.
you can basically tell exactly where your hand is at all times. Because if you get closer to the cone, you'll feel the cone, and if you get further down, you'll feel the butt.
Feel the end, yeah, exactly.
A lot quicker. So it's just like kind of subconsciously, I know where my racket is a little bit more.
Right.
And when I'm smashing, like I go almost all the way to the edge.
Yeah.
Or I try to.
Yeah.
To get the most, just like swing. But yeah, I was like definitely experimenting between like G4, G5, G6 this year. I think my consensus is I used to be a giant fan of the thinnest grips because I was like, oh, I can get like the most, like the loosest grip and like the most
squeeze. Power. Yeah.
But I was working with my coach this year, and he said, actually something that was pretty interesting. I think it's just like a difference in like cultural and like how they teach. Because I have a Korean coach, and the coach I had before it's Jacob. So
okay.
like, I guess like America / China. I don't really know. But he was always telling me how I should have a very loose grip.
Yeah.
But my Korean coach, Jinsun, was like basically like, yeah, sometimes in the front court, it's good to have like a relaxed grip, but not a loose grip.
Right.
Like you shouldn't have like open hands.
Right.
Because it basically, his thought was, or the way he explained it to me was, you're gonna have more errors if you have all this like wiggle room.
Yeah, this slop. Yeah.
Right. Like you should still be like you should not be like death gripping this.
Yeah.
But you should have like a formed hand around it so you can move. That's why I started to venture away from smaller grips. Is because it felt uncomfortable to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, with my 88D Pro that I'm currently using, I actually have the factory grip on it.
Oh,
I have this extra stuff on the bottom.
Yeah.
And then I have the normal grip, and I feel like it's basically made my 88D Pro like really heavy.
Yeah.
a total. So
yeah.
In this racket in particular, I have the fatter butt, some memory foam, and then just the grip. But I think I'm venturing more towards this because I think this is a better balance.
Yeah.
Because that is like holding a Twinkie. It's like it's like this.
Yeah, it's just giant. Yeah.
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 But yeah, I do think it makes a big difference in terms of like grip sizes and stuff. Especially if you have like smaller hands, like going smaller might help.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried out some of these. Well, like literally because you've like either gripped my rackets or
oh yeah,
yeah. Then
like
I
just end up using
because like I don't do this by myself, but I've like tried some of his rackets or like I've given some of his rackets or some of my rackets for him to test, and he just grips them like that.
It's definitely an acquired taste.
It is. I will say that I like it for. So I like to stay loose for like when I do singles drills or when I play singles, and so that's where I really like and I prefer it. Right? Exactly. Yeah.
I could see that.
But like my grip style, I prefer just like a more traditional style personally because like when I smash, like I find that so having a loose hand and like being able to just like have the racket come through relaxed does give me more power. But like I tend to like having all my fingers activated so I can like place my smash better, right? So it's like having all my fingers like interacting with the grip while it's swinging is important for me. And so as a result, like I don't actually like use it that much in doubles when I'm smashing.
Yeah.
And actually, and another thing that I do that's kind of weird is that sometimes like when I go for big smashes, I'll actually have my palm overrunning the grip like this.
Oh,
like beyond the grip. Yeah, so it actually interferes with that.
Yeah, I could not do that.
It is weird. Yeah.
My hand would slip. Yeah.
That's actually why I also like grip it beyond the
that makes
end
sense.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Leave a like for sweaty hand game. Sweaty hand.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else actually does that, but like that's just something I do. So.
Yeah.
And I haven't like chucked any rackets yet, so far so good.
I enjoy thinner grips if I'm using towel grip.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say like towel grip, like you cannot feel where it is in your hand nearly as much as when you have just a regular like super grip.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Yeah. So I guess that about wraps it up.
Thank you for joining us.
We had a lot of thank you for joining us. Yeah. So thanks for joining us for this episode of the
Shuttle Couch.
Shuttle Couch.
I forgot the name of the show.
The name of my own freaking show. Shuttle Couch. You know, we'll have obviously we have a lot of topics to talk about. So
yeah, I feel like Rackets, like while I'm interested in them and it's cool, like I definitely like want to talk about gameplay and like pro scene a lot more. So there's a lot more rambling.
Exactly. So it's not just Rackets, but like future episodes we're going to talk about pro badminton, we're going to talk about technique, we're going to talk about gear, other types of gear that are not rackets, like shoes, bags, I don't know, whatever.
Insole of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoe insole. I was joking with him. I was like,
yeah, no, I know, but like
want to do racket of the
insoles
year?
are important though. Like talk about just like tech talks like and stuff like that.
Or even like how we like. I'm not a pro, but like I still have to like get up and walk in the morning, right? So like, how do I avoid injury?
Right. Yes,
I land.
That's a big one.
You know, I jump like a butterfly and I land like a hippopotamus.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid knee injuries, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a scary thought. Hippopotamus with butterfly wings.
Yes. That's fucking terrifying.
Anyways, well, with that being said, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Shuttle Couch. See you in the next video.